All right, so if we start with the first use case, and this will be an asset evaluation. So just going through some evidence from clinical trials and literature related to an asset. And you can imagine that you're working at a biopharma company with deep expertise in maybe a specific target or indication, and a new asset has just come across your desk. This might fit your company strategy. So whether you're then a research scientist digging into the underlying biology, you may be a clinical development lead scoping out the trial or regulatory path, or the BD or market research analyst looking at the commercial opportunity. You're all trying to answer somewhat the same question. So is this a reasonable asset? Does it hold up? And where does it potentially fit? So assuming that you have Claude in your company, the problem now is then that Claude, it can produce reports that are decent. It can create some outputs, but it may not live up to the rigor required for making these kinds of decisions, these high stakes decisions. And you may also see yourself spending more time quality controlling the outputs and verifying the accuracy than it would otherwise take to maybe amass that work together. So ideally, maybe in these cases, you want to evaluate the target or mechanism of action, the molecular profile, how it differs from other molecules, what clinical evidence is there for this molecule or this class, and what are the regulatory precedents? Does it have competition? What the IP landscape looks like? So looking at the competitive landscape and patents. And then, of course, combining all these factors. So how differentiated is the asset, what the strength of evidence is for this, what the competitive risk is. And of course, you want to be able to trace everything back to the right PMIDs, NCT numbers, patent numbers, and so on. So for the example itself, I chose an antibody that basically did exactly what it was designed to do. And it's, well, this is going to give it away, but it cleared amyloid plaques from the brain as it was supposed to, confirmed by PET scans. And it did it at a rate where its own maker's model predicted it almost perfectly, but the trials still failed. And the asset in question is gantenerumab. So it's a biologic asset for Alzheimer's disease, targeting the amyloid beta precursor protein. So basically, this went through around a decade of trials, and it's marketed by Roche, or not marketed actually. So it failed the phase 3 trials in 2022. After a decade-plus long program, there were a number of different programs with the molecule, different trials, and ultimately it did not pass through or pass past phase 3. It has a very detailed public record and documented pattern. There's also a lot of evidence for anti-amyloid antibodies. And yeah, this was the fourth major anti-amyloid antibody to fail a pivotal trial in the last 10 years. Okay, so how should we then start evaluating this in mass? So of course, we could start by gathering some data, gathering some information, asking some questions about how to go about this. So maybe if we didn't have a better approach, we would want to evaluate gantenerumab as a biologics asset for Alzheimer's disease. Is it worth continued investment? Of course, we know that it failed phase 3 or partnership interest. So the likely answer is no. But is there maybe anything else that we could find from this evidence? So we can go ahead and ask this. And as you can see, well, now Claude is working on it. Unless we specify which assets Claude is using. So in this case, I didn't mention anything about Amass. I didn't have any other connectors available. So we, first of all, maybe want to be able to verify that Claude is using the right tools. And okay, so now Claude already has some context. You can see that it's found some assessment that I previously run, and you can see that it also used a skill here, clinical assessment. So it actually already has some context. So unless it were for this, Claude would actually just do web searches. So try to find this information online. Now with Amass, we're actually working with a skill already. And this is important because this also allows us to get a complete package from the get-go with minimal effort, include the right parts, have some evaluations as well for Claude itself to quality control its work, and provide the format that we want as well in the end. So of course we could specify this in a prompt, but if it's in skill, this will make our lives a whole lot easier. So we could choose to do a full package, report and dashboard only, written analysis only. Maybe we'll just do a report and dashboard for this part. Okay, who is this for? Is it for investment committee, BD licensing evaluation, general due diligence? Let's just go with the investment committee in this case, as an example. So we can just let Claude work through this now.